Morrissey Show. Today is Thursday, October 1st, 2015, and my goodness, how time flies. Welcoming back to the show, Duane, Generalissimo Patterson of the Hugh Hewitt Show. It's already October, man. I mean, I got it this morning. It was like 37 degrees.
Thanks for having me back on, and thanks for allowing us to kind of do this in a different time spot today. For the next couple of weeks, things are even crazier than normal around here because Adam Youngman, our esteemed colleague who runs the board and has done Yoma's work for these many years, is finally going to be married on Saturday. So today and tomorrow is the official pre-wedding jitters and last-minute arrangements. Saturday is the wedding, and then he's off to honeymoon for a couple of weeks. And so I get to run the board and produce, and not produce, depending on who you ask, and do everything else that's necessary. So there's lots of pre-taping that we normally do just because of people's schedules. Like, for instance, at the time we would normally be doing this, we're going to be talking to Ben Carson, Karl Rove, and Larry Arnn. So I'm glad that we were able to move this up, and we may have to do this for the next couple of weeks.
That's great. You know, there's no problem with that. Well, we can have a lot of fun with pre-tapes and doing all sorts of stuff. And the nice thing about that is that we can take the time and make sure that we message things correctly, Duane. We can actually take our time, and we can do we can do a little bit of...
And that's something we learned this week.
Is.
We have a glaring example of good messaging. We have a glaring example of bad messaging.
You know, wasn't it Alan Sherman that had that song, Great Idea? Did you ever hear that song?
I thought he had Hello Mudda Hello Fada.
He had that one too, but I mean, he had another song called Great Idea, and the chorus went something, and that was a great idea. Great idea. And then the last thing was Christopher Columbus sailed around the world and he fell off the edge of the world, and that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
So you probably heard this before. So Kevin McCarthy had a bad idea.
That was bad messaging. And you know, it's the thing about Kevin McCarthy is he an improvement over John Boehner? By most accounts, probably. I mean, we won't know till he actually gets the gig and actually, is in leadership and does what he's supposed to do. But the book on Kevin McCarthy is, we think he's more conservative than Boehner. We think that he will have more of an instinct to maybe be a little more aggressive than Boehner was, possibly. We don't know. But the one thing that we thought we could say for sure was he's at least a better communicator and a better messenger, because Boehner just was old school. God love him, John Boehner sat in his office, smoked his cigarettes, hit his suntan machine, and then when he came out once a week for his weekly press conference, he did his weekly press conference, and then he went and raised some more money and went back to smoking his cools.
And by the way, this is not an exaggeration on Duane's part. I actually sat in his office with some other conservative reporters, and that's exactly what it was like. He was sitting in his big old wing chair.
I'm not lying. I am not lying.
Not lying at all. That's exactly what it was like. And it was fine. It was, that was the authentic John Boehner. But yeah, you're right.
So Kevin McCarthy at least has more of a communication skill, and he knows that the role of the speaker, at least as professed in the last couple of days when he's done some interviews, in how he's going to look at the speakership, is he needs to do a better job at messaging. So then you enter this week when he's on Fox News and they're talking about Hillary Clinton, and he says, look at the Benghazi committee. Look at the select committee in Benghazi that we impaneled. Look at what that's been able to do. Look at Hillary Clinton's poll numbers since we've impaneled that thing. Look how much her poll numbers have tanked. You think that's a coincidence? Nope, I don't think so. It's like, oh, Jesus.
Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing that we've been fighting.
No.
We have been fighting this point for 3 years
Trey
now.
Gowdy has been fighting for years to try and make sure that this thing isn't portrayed at... He has done everything humanly possible to bring the Democrats into the process and make this a bipartisan, fact-finding, Joe Friday, just the facts, ma'am, dragnet committee to the best of his ability. And he's done remarkable service. And then Kevin McCarthy, the next Speaker of the House, that is the messaging machine, goes and gives a Louisville Slugger signature model, signed,
you're right.
And gift wrapped it, boxed it up, and handed it to Hillary Clinton. And she wasted about 4 seconds before unwrapping that puppy and taking batting practice.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what we did.
Surrogates.
For 3 years, we've been arguing that this needs a very thorough review by Congress, which is the legitimate constitutional oversight.
Goes where it goes. If Hillary Clinton has some explaining to do, and that's because that's where the evidence leads, then so be it. But Trey Gowdy's trying to treat it like CSI Congressional Committee, right?
Right, as he should, really. I mean, honestly, right? Yeah, and then
McCarthy politicized it in 10 seconds.
Just stepped all over that. The effort for 3 years, and of course, Elijah Cummings comes out and says, "You need to disband this committee."
I mean, Donna Brazile came out and said, "See, the whole thing should be disbanded because the whole thing's partisan and politicized," and even the incoming speaker said as much. It's like, oh God.
Yeah,
no.
John Boehner issued a statement about late in the morning today saying, "Yeah, no, we're not going to be disbanding the Benghazi Select Committee. There's a lot of things that still have to be determined on this." And by the way, if it hadn't been for the fact that the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton were keeping this information from the panel all these years, we'd already be done with this.
It would be over.
It'd be over with. Yeah.
The only reason they are still in existence is because Hillary Clinton is not just dragging her feet; she's nailed in spikes and has sprouted roots.
All right, so
bad messaging.
Bad messaging. Before we get to good messaging, does this hurt McCarthy's chances of becoming speaker? I mean, this is a bad time to step on a message.
And I'll tell you why. Quite frankly, I mean, there's a lot of conservatives that are just wringing their hands and they're wailing and gnashing teeth over the fact that McCarthy's getting in there, who was Boehner's top stooge. Okay, I get that. Number one, I think McCarthy's more conservative than Boehner is, I think, but we'll see. However, nobody else wants the gig. It's just that simple.
Yep.
You can will yourself to having the most firebrand conservative in there you want. Nobody wants the gig. The only one that's even hinting he wants it is McCarthy. Oh, sure, there's a couple of no-name backbenchers that have thrown their
Webster and I forget who the other one is.
Right, and if you were to actually hold the vote today in the House caucus, Webster would probably get 2 votes, and McCarthy would probably get 244 or whatever it is.
Right.
I mean,
so you're not concerned that this is going to going to change things.
Nobody else wants the job.
I don't blame them.
Wants it.
I don't blame them. John Boehner didn't want this job. The only reason he still had it was because Eric Cantor lost an election. I mean, really, that's it.
The only job that's even remotely interesting here, quite frankly, is the majority leader job. Because Kevin McCarthy is going to go in as speaker, but if you think he's got a long leash and he's going to be there for 20 years, he's got a pretty short leash. The battle is going to be between Scalise and Tom Price out of Georgia, Doc Price, who is the chairman of the Budget Committee. And I think who else has been? Isn't Pete Sessions even thinking about throwing his name in there? I
thought I heard something about that. I know that some people were talking about Trey Gowdy,
but I'm not sure.
But Gowdy said no. I mean, Gowdy was being talked about for that too, and Gowdy said no.
Right.
I think,
the interesting thing is going to be who's going to be the majority leader, because if you get a conservative as majority leader, that's your next speaker. If McCarthy doesn't deliver through, he's got a short leash, and the wheels could come off that wagon within a couple of years. And then you've got a potential conservative firebrand that's, Kevin McCarthy could be the John the Baptist, to use a very poor metaphor, but he could be the harbinger of good things to come. If you want to look at a conservative person being a Speaker of the House.
Right.
Nobody is positioned right now to be the top job. It just isn't there. Doesn't mean there won't be down the road, but the interesting spot is the majority leader position, and that's much more hotly contested, and that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, McCarthy's old position. So, yep, I think you're right about that. All right, so we've heard bad messaging. Let us hear about good messaging, and this is actually coming from kind of a surprising source.
Correct. Rick Santorum. And I know a lot of people that hear Rick Santorum and they just roll their eyes thinking, oh, geez. Okay. he's a nice guy. I get it. Good Catholic, good family man. We've done this bit before. He's not going to get the nomination. He didn't get the nomination last time. There's not a chance in the world Rex Santorum is going to be anywhere, but he was on The View. And so look at the environment he's in. Wall-to-wall women's, right? War on women's, all the women's in Manhattan in that stage against Rick Santorum.
Maybe the most high-profile Republican Party social conservative that there is. At the moment, at least. Right, yeah.
Right. Oil and water, right?
Right. You'd expect.
When it comes to the life issue especially. The subject, naturally, is Planned Parenthood.
Of course it is.
Now, Whoopi Goldberg is leading witness. If you're looking at the television to your left, she's on the far left. I don't even know everybody else that's on The View these days. I don't care. It's 5 women, right? Whoever's on the right picks up halfway through this cut and literally walks herself into a box canyon and doesn't even realize they're doing it. Here is how to do the Planned Parenthood argument. We saw that in Congress this week, the House Committee on Government Oversight, led by Jason Chaffetz, who apparently the Secret Service doesn't like, by the way.
Yeah. You think?
Which we learned about that too this week.
Yes, we did.
I'm trying to drop in as many things as I can to at least say we paid lip service to
absolutely
all the issues that we possibly could. So, House Committee on Government Oversight holds this hearing and just grills Cecile Richards. Spanish Inquisition times 100, right? I mean, just completely grills her for hours on end. And gets a lot of interesting things out of Cecile Richards that she has to say that conflict with what she has said before. So now you've got The View, who's picking up on what happened in the House and not paying any attention to what Cecile Richards said, mind you, because that would require a brain cell and actually focusing on the actual facts. But you've got the issue, and the issue is now being talked about. The Republicans are trying to destroy Planned Parenthood again. We're going to go to war and support our sisters in Planned Parenthood one more time. Here's one of the chief guys that's trying to put him out of business. Let's go get him. Here's Whoopi Goldberg and Rick Santorum, and unlike the committee, which got fairly hostile and fairly contentious, here is Rick Santorum totally owning it. And I mean swatting away the talking points, owning the argument, and doing a gotcha that leaves the panel speechless, completely civilly, without anybody yelling and screaming. This, if you want to do messaging, this is how you do it. Let me
lay it on us, bro.
Yeah, I know. Here we go.
Nothing so far. And we just lost your mic.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm back. I got to find my. Oh, okay, there we go.
$1 that goes to Planned Parenthood and put.
How do you say to your constituents who may be gay or may find themselves in a position with something like Planned Parenthood? What will you replace it with if you take it away?
Well, first off, I'm for reallocating every dollar that goes to Planned Parenthood and put them in women's health centers that actually provide more comprehensive services than Planned Parenthood does. Planned Parenthood, for example, doesn't provide mammograms. Now, I know people say they do, but they don't. In fact,
yeah, they do.
No, Cecile Richards yesterday at the hearing said, in fact, they do not. In fact, there are no Planned Parenthoods that provide any mammogram services. They basically provide abortion, contraceptive, STDs, things like and pregnancy tests. That's
the first half of the cut. Whoopi Goldberg has no idea what reality is. She just knows what the talking points are. She knows what her perceived reality is. But they do mammograms. No, they don't.
No, they don't.
You should have watched the hearing yesterday, because Cecile Richards, the one you're defending, said so under oath and said, not only do we not do it, I've never said we've done mammograms, except, of course, Cecile Richards had said it before. She lied.
Right.
But that's beside the point. Rick Santorum, here's Whoopi Goldberg say the mammogram thing, and he just swatted it down, saying, ask the director of Planned Parenthood, who said under oath yesterday, we don't do them. And all of a sudden, Whoopi goes, oh, she's done. She's got nothing else. That was her big talking point. She was going to use the healthcare thing, and Rick Santorum now goes on a little bit of a lengthy thing about what the money should be spent on.
Right.
Which is actually what Whoopi Goldberg is calling for. And here's how the rest of the cut goes.
it. There are much more comprehensive women's health care centers. I spent a lot of time in Iowa, and in Iowa there's 213 women's health centers. 13 Planned Parenthood centers. So if you said we were going to take the Planned Parenthood money, reallocate it to actually clinics that do provide a whole host of other women's health services, women are probably going to get a more holistic health screening at those places than they would at Planned Parenthood.
So
interesting.
Huh.
Yeah.
Good messaging so far.
So far, so good. Yeah, definitely
and
good messaging here.
And the panel using the argument of, well, but you're taking money away from women's health care, that's now been totally destroyed. They've got no comeback to that at all. They're like, well, then you've got far panelists to the right, women's as far to the right, saying, yeah, but what about the women that still need to get abortions? What about that? Here's the rest of the cut.
You're saying if you reallocate all of that money away from Planned Parenthood to these clinics, will those clinics then provide abortions, or where do you want these displaced women to go?
Yeah, well, there are obviously, Planned Parenthood is one abortion provider in the country. There are others that provide abortions. Some, it depends on the state. Some, there are very few abortion providers. Some, like in the state of New York, there's a lot of them. So that, again, the money that we're reallocating has nothing to do with abortion. I mean, I will accept that the money that is going to Planned Parenthood cannot be used for abortion. So when you reallocate that money away, it shouldn't affect their ability to provide abortions, unless, of course, they're commingling funds, and that's one of the questions that people have.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, right.
Uh-oh.
This, to me, is the reason why The View is such a lame program, is that basically you have a bunch of people up there who don't take the time to inform themselves. I mean, even Planned Parenthood would know not to open that door, right? Because they understand it.
I mean, Rick Santorum heard that question, and he had to be thinking to himself, "Thank you, God.
Yeah,
am I really that lucky?"
He had that image of red meat, that big red thick steak, right there on the grill.
Yeah, but what about the displaced women that still need abortions? Well, according to the argument that your side is making, which I'm willing to give you your side of the argument, that none of this federal money is spent on abortions because that would be illegal. So let's say for a moment you're worried about women's health care because we want to keep abortion on the down low. We're more worried about women's access to health care. If we take the money from a private organization and we reallocate it to all the centers that actually provide women's health care, you're going to get better women's health care. As far as the women that get abortions, that money already is not supposed to be going there because that would be illegal. We've decided as a culture, as a society, it's illegal to spend taxpayer money on abortions. So that money already isn't going there. If a woman wants to get abortion, they're a private provider. There's several private providers out there that do abortions. None of that changes unless, wink, wink, nod, nod, of course, the taxpayer money that's not supposed to be going there is commingled, and in fact, it is. In which case, we've got a violation of the law, don't we, ladies? It was brilliant. Yeah. I mean, it was just brilliant.
Well, this is the difference between a person who knows what they're talking about and who can argue from the facts and can do so pretty dispassionately, and that's actually a
textbook.
Well, it's textbook, but people don't give Rick Santorum enough credit on that point.
No,
there's some reasons why he doesn't necessarily resonate as a presidential candidate, but he's actually a pretty good legislator, and this is one of the reasons why, is because he that's the way he approached argument in the legislature as well, in the Senate.
You'll notice that the entire crowd didn't hiss and boo and start throwing things at him and spit and get all uppity, because the bottom line is he made sense. And he totally took their argument away from them and did so civilly without even raising his voice.
Right.
And they had nothing. They had nothing.
No, I agree with you. I mean, that's the issue, right? Yeah.
So anyway, I'm just saying that's how you do it.
Bad messaging versus good messaging. And that is how it's done, ladies and gentlemen. Good messaging. All right. So moving on to the next issue, which would be for you. Let's do Syria. Because right now it looks like everybody wants to bomb Syria. You know, it's like, what's that old TV series, Everybody Loves Raymond? Everybody hates Chris. This is everybody bombs Syria, except apparently us. What's going on in Syria?
Well, it's funny you ask it that way, because if you want to know what's going on, can I turn to the prophet?
The prophet?
The prophet to let you know what's going on? And when I mean the prophet, I don't mean like Mitt Romney, who was a prophet in the third debate, saying that Russia was our biggest geopolitical, foe, and we'd have to worry about Russia down the road. And
pretty good prophecy, though. Pretty good
prophecy.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about a new prophet, a neo prophet. Do you remember the great debate at the Reagan Library a couple of weeks back?
I do. I recall this. Yes.
There was a young senator there, kind of just off to the left of middle on the overall row of podiums.
Right.
Young guy. About 45. Kind of a Latino looking guy, Cuban descent. Goes by the name of Rubio, senator out of Florida. You ever heard of him?
I've heard of him. Yes. The name has popped up once or twice, definitely.
Do you remember when that debate was? What day? Ed Morrissey?
Yeah, it was September 16th, if I remember correctly.
Which would be 2 weeks ago yesterday.
That's correct.
Okay. I want to just remind you of just a little passage from there, because we heard lots out of that, but what you didn't hear was Marco Rubio, the prophet. Do you remember Marco Rubio, the prophet?
I actually do remember this passage. Yes, it was one of his best moments, actually.
Yes, it was. I got to play it again. Here it is.
You've taken a very different approach to the question of Russia. You've called Vladimir Putin a, quote, gangster. Why would President Rubio's approach be more effective than President Trump's?
Well, first of all, I have an understanding of exactly what it is Russia and Putin are doing, and it's pretty straightforward. He wants to reposition Russia once again as a geopolitical force. He himself said that the destruction of the Soviet Union, the fall of the Soviet Union, was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. And now he's trying to reverse that. He's trying to destroy NATO. And this is what this is a part of. He is exploiting a vacuum that this administration has left in the Middle East. Here's what you're going to see in the next few weeks. The Russians will begin to fly combat missions in that region, not just targeting ISIS, but in order to prop up Assad. He will also then turn to other countries in the region and say, America is no longer a reliable ally, Egypt. America is no longer a reliable ally, Saudi Arabia. Begin to rely on us. What he is doing is he is trying to replace us as the single most important power broker in the Middle East. And this president is allowing it. That is what is happening in the Middle East. That's what's happening with Russia and every region.
Every single thing he said in there took place within 2 weeks. The Russians bombed, not ISIS, they bombed anti-Assad elements, basically our guys, the people we're supporting, the ones that we're trying to train up, and the ones that we're trying to keep alive in that part of the world to be able to try and go back in and take care of Assad and do our dirty work for him. That's who the Russians bombed. They didn't attack ISIS. They helped ISIS. They were giving them a solid. They were assisting them. Who they attacked, by extension, was us. It was an act of war. But Marco Rubio called a shot. He said within a few weeks, you're going to see Russia start conducting military flights and bombing raids. They did.
Probably faster than Rubio would have even predicted, to be honest with you.
Right after he made that prediction, in the last few days, Donald Trump, the presumptive leader of the Republicans right now in all polling, if you ask him and everybody else, he thinks that Marco Rubio is a lightweight. Everyone knows this. Donald Trump, according to Donald Trump, knows more about Syria than Rubio, because Donald Trump builds buildings and creates jobs. Marco Rubio sits behind a desk and reads things, and that's all he does. So we know that's why he's a lightweight. The same Donald Trump 2 days ago said, what do I care if Russia gets in the middle of Syria? Because if they want to take care of ISIS for us, great, we all win. Why should we be against that? Well, because that's not what they're doing,
no.
Donald. They're not attacking ISIS. Do you know what they really are doing? You may not even know this, Ed Morrissey. Yeah, they conducted a bombing raid, and yeah, they've moved in some aircraft, and they've got an air base set up. They're working on a second air base, and they've moved in some tanks, and they've got some housing there, and they've now got up to 1,500 troops on the ground that they're expected to move in some more, along with Revolutionary Guard. We know all this, but do you know what else they're doing, Ed Morrissey?
No, I don't.
Did you and again, we're working under the presumption that was stated by Russia yesterday, and Russia's communication message has never lied throughout their glorious history, right?
Right.
All they are there for is to get rid of ISIS, because ISIS is the scourge of the world and somebody needs to finally do something. We're here to help. I bet you didn't know ISIS had a robust air force, did you?
No, I wasn't aware that ISIS had a robust air force.
Well, apparently they do, because Russia is defending against it. Did you hear the NATO commander yesterday?
No, I have not heard this.
That's what I'm saying. I'm going to give you something you didn't hear, which is got to just make you just feel all warm and fuzzy about this whole Russia involvement thing.
Oh, goody.
This is Philip Breedlove, who is the current active NATO senior commander, okay?
Yep.
Here is what he sees going on and what his intelligence has shown him.
We see some very sophisticated air defenses going into these airfields. We see some very sophisticated air-to-air aircraft going into these airfields. I have not seen ISIL flying any airplanes that require SA-15s or SA-22s. I have not seen ISIL flying any airplanes that require sophisticated air-to-air capabilities. These very sophisticated air defense capabilities are not about ISIL. They're about something else.
They're about something else, said Morrissey.
Yeah, gee, I wonder what it might be.
You have any? Can you hazard a guess at why the Russians might have now encircled Damascus with a ring of not only air-to-air aircraft, air-to-air capable aircraft, and SA-15s and SA-22s, which are surface-to-air missiles? Basically, that's to take care of any hint or thought that America might have to try and take out Assad. But in cold, hard reality, you know who that's meant to block?
I would guess the Israelis. It would be my best guess on that.
The Israelis, the Egyptians, and the Saudis.
Yeah.
Who were all talking about forming their own regional coalition force.
Well, of course, the Jordanians, too. And the Jordanians, too. The Jordanians have a pretty decent air force, too. Yeah.
You're right. I didn't mean to slight the Jordanians. But that whole regional Sunni Arab plus Israeli helped, we know Iran is working with Russia. Russia is basically the mercenaries for Iran at this point. They're paid mercs is what they are.
I'll tell you where this may run aground, though, for Vladimir Putin is with Turkey, because Turkey hates Assad. Absolutely hates Assad. They've been trying to get him out for a very long time.
However, it may be a case where the only diplomacy that Russia has been engaging, according to the Egyptian Independent and some other foreign media outlets that are starting to report on what's really going on here, Russia has been doing a lot of outreach with Saudi Arabia and Turkey.
Yeah.
And trying to basically say, what you don't understand is you've kind of relied on America to kind of take the slings and arrows. They're not doing it anymore. Again, going back to Marco Rubio, the prophet, Russia is saying, America ain't going to be there for you. We're going to be here, and you can either work with us or you can work against us, and you're going to be destroyed because we will hurt you.
Yeah.
And they're trying to do the strong horse mentality. And a lot of times in that part of the world, the strong horse mentality works. Russia's saying there's a new sheriff in town, and we like vodka. Thank you very much. But they're circling Damascus and protecting Assad and keeping the Iranian puppet in place against not just any flights that we might conduct, but even if Israel or Egypt or Saudi Arabia got a wild hair and decided to try and do some kind of a mission to take them out, well, that's going to be a lot harder now because you got to skirt some new fancy Russian SAMs. It's
provocative to say the least.
If the Middle East weren't dangerous enough,
Yeah.
It's just that much more dangerous.
It's a very scary situation. So you had John Kerry. Fortunately, John Kerry, publicly rebuked the Russian foreign minister, refused to meet with him until they. Oh, wait a minute, that's not right. Didn't he do he do a photo op with Sergei Lavrov?
No, he did a photo op and played backseat and let Lavrov lead. We were leading from behind.
Well, that's great because it goes right along with that whole reset button, right? This is just awesome. That whole reset button thing really worked out well. It's a good thing that Hillary Clinton's running for president because that way we can just continue this fun for the next, 4 to 8 years. Don't you think that this is a great idea?
You mentioned Hillary Clinton. Do you know what she said about Syria? Do you know what she said about Syria yesterday?
Where's Syria?
No.
I visited there once.
She actually knows where Syria is, and she braced herself for the hard-hitting, tough questions that was going to come on Syria, and what her recent statements were about how Bashar al-Assad was a reformer and all that stuff. Do you know where she went to get that good, hard-hitting, tough interview?
Andrea Mitchell?
Close. Think of Andrea Mitchell, except younger and blacker.
Golly. Now I'm at a loss. Who are we talking about now?
The Reverend Al Sharpton.
Oh my God. Younger?
About the same. But he's a couple years younger.
Is he really? I would have guessed older.
Andrea Mitchell's a little long in the tooth.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Al Sharpton. This will be a hard-hitting interview. Yeah.
Here's Hillary Clinton and Al Sharpton on Syria.
Stand by for a moment. I want to get to Eamon in just a moment, but we have some new tape in just now here on MSNBC. Reverend Al Sharpton just recently, this afternoon, spoke to Hillary Clinton and asked her about the airstrikes. Let's hear what she had to say.
Al, I had a different strategy back when I was a Secretary of State. I can't sit here today and tell you that if my strategy had been followed, we'd be in a different place because this has so much of a dynamic of its own. What I believed then is that Assad was the principal threat because his bombarding and his ruthless behavior toward his own people was going to create more terrorists. It was going to create refugees. It was going to destabilize neighboring countries. All that has come to pass, but
Ed Morrissey, she's always been against Assad.
Yeah, even back when he was a reformer.
Even she was the one. I got that. If you want it.
Yeah, let's roll that because I believe that was from 2011. Was it not in the middle of the Arab Spring?
And in fact, that appearance was 3 days before the email that just got leaked from Hillary Clinton. Literally 3 days before Assad gave his reformer speech, in which her own staff said, he hasn't changed a lick. We told you he was rotten. He's still rotten. And we're going to have to see what we can do about it down the road. So she was the email leaking, which should have been classified, shows that 3 days before, when she went on TV and said he was a reformer, she was talking out of her ass anyway.
Right.
So here is Hillary Clinton back in March 27th, 2011.
All right.
But, I mean, how can that be worse than what has happened in Syria over the years, where Bashar Assad's father killed 25,000 people at a lick? I mean, they opened fire with live ammunition on these civilians. Why is that different from Libya?
Well,
this is a friend of Iran, an enemy of Israel.
Well, if there were a coalition of the international community, if there were the passage of a Security Council resolution, if there were a call by the Arab League, if there was a condemnation that was universal, but that is not going to happen because I don't think that it's yet clear what will occur, what will unfold. There is a different leader in Syria now. Many of the members of Congress of both parties who have gone to Syria in recent months have said they believe he's a reformer. What's been happening there the last few weeks is deeply concerning. But there's a difference between calling out aircraft and indiscriminately strafing and bombing your own cities than police actions, which frankly have exceeded the use of force that any of us would want to see.
Reformer.
Reformer. He's a different kind of dictator. according
he's
to
a
Hillary
different
Clinton.
kind of dictator. We have to wait and see what he's really going to be like.
Or we could just bomb him out of existence like we did Gaddafi and have another failed state.
Right. By the way,
or.
So at least we know she was inconsistent on Syria, but at least with Russia, she's been rock solid, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, she's been great on reset button. Madam Reset button.
The last time Russia was involved in maybe doing something in regards to intervention in Syria, do you remember when the last time that was?
Let's see. You'll have to refresh my memory here.
July of 2012.
That sounds about right.
Do you know who happened to be Secretary of State then?
I think it was Hillary Clinton, was it not?
It was, and she actually had something to say about Russia's intervention into Syria. Would you be interested to know what she said then?
I would love to know what she said.
Well, fortunately, I have the audio.
We should go back and ask for a resolution in the Security Council that imposes real and immediate consequences for noncompliance, including sanctions under Chapter 7. Now, what can every nation and group represented here do? I ask you to reach out to Russia and China and to not only urge but demand that they get off the sidelines and begin to support the legitimate aspirations of the Syrian people. I will tell you very frankly, I don't think Russia and China believe they are paying any price at all, nothing at all, for standing up on behalf of the Assad regime. The only way that will change is if every nation represented here directly and urgently makes it clear that Russia and China will pay a price because they are holding up progress, blockading it, that is no longer tolerable.
3 years after that.
3 years after that, we're just letting... we consider it a good solution to have Russia come in and prop up the Assad regime. Who knew?
Where's that price again? And is Hillary so I'm waiting for that statement from Hillary Clinton today about the price.
Right. The price is right. I feel like I'm on a game show. The price is right.
It's amazing, isn't it, Ed?
It is amazing.
It's horrific. It's bad. It's everything we feared and worse. But
yeah,
on the one hand, if you wanted to know what the end times might start to look like when biblically America isn't referred to anywhere in prophecy, like it's not that America's destroyed. They're just not mentioned, like they're not involved anywhere. They're just not part of the process.
Right.
And you wanted to kind of see what that looks like. I'm not saying this is it. This may not even be the introduction of the book, but this could be like a couple paragraphs in a preface, maybe.
Possibly. And I think one of the people may have been Rubio.
Because we aren't a factor in this at all.
I do recall, Duane, too, from that debate on September 16th, and I actually do not remember if this was Rubio or not, but somebody was talking about the fact that we are starting to get a look at what the world looks like without American leadership.
A post-America world.
Yeah. And it's ugly.
This is actually the beginning of a Mark Stein book, is what it is.
Basically. Who's going to be on the show tonight, by the way? If I don't miss my guess.
No, I get it. Tonight, we're going to be talking with Ben Carson. We're going to be talking with Bobby Jindal. We will be talking with Karl Rove, the architect, David Drucker, Congressman Mick Mulvaney out of South Carolina on the leadership race that's going on there.
Excellent.
Jim Town will be along. Lilacs will be along. All sorts of fun ahead.
Should be a lot of fun, and it's going to start at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. on the left coast.
Yes.
Hopefully. We'll see. Duane will be very busy this afternoon, and I want to thank you for being here. By the way, you can watch the show live on the Hughnivers, HUGHNIVERSE.com, the troll-free web surfing experience for Hugh Hewitt listeners. I'm a member. You should be a member too. Duane, if they're not members, How can people listen to the Hugh Hewitt Show on their local AM radio band? It's sometimes it's on a few of these places you can't find it. What are they to do when that happens?
Well, you can call Hillary Clinton and have her go down to that station where we ought to be on and tell that GM there is a price to be paid.
A price?
There is going to be a price to be paid. You mark my words. Someday, somewhere, there has to be a price paid.
You will rue the day.
Yeah. Strong letter to follow.
Strong letter of condemnation from every nation in the universe if you can't put that on the AM band. But hey, you can also go to hughhewitt.com and listen to the audio streaming there if you're too cheap to be a member of the universe. Then we're going to have a chat with you if that's the case. But Duane, thank you for coming on early today. We'll do it again next week, do the pre-tape. But thanks for coming on and have a great show today.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks, guys.
All right. And now we're back live on the Ed Morrissey Show. Joining me now is Ramona Trevino, author of Redeemed by Grace, A Catholic Woman's Journey to Planned Parenthood and Back. This book came out from Ignatius Press back in February. But of course, given the news and the videos coming out for the Center for Medical Progress, I think there should be some renewed interest in Ramona's story. Welcome to the show, Ramona. Great to have you on with us.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Well, first off, I've had a chance to flip through the book a little bit. I told you that I haven't had a chance to read it, but I have to tell you the one passage that really did grab my eye while I was flipping through this book, because Lila Rose is a friend of mine. I've known her for a while. We've talked on lots of different occasions here on the show and elsewhere, and I was fascinated to read the backstory of how that played out at Planned Parenthood while you were there. This happened while you were there when she was first doing her own undercover videos at Planned Parenthood. And I just was kind of curious as to how that plays in the book into your eventual conversion, or reversion, I should say, back into the Catholic Church.
Right. There was, and I apologize, I'm hearing some feedback, but I don't know if you're hearing it on your end.
No, I'm not hearing it on my end, but okay. Ramona, I should warn you that we have something here called open source production values, which basically means I'm my own producer and I fire myself on a regular basis, but I can't find anybody to work as cheap as I do, so...
Well, it's gone now, so maybe it was just a weather thing. We're getting a little bit of rain. So.
Who knows?
When I started working for Planned Parenthood, I didn't know a whole lot about, the other side. I was kind of really naive and clueless when it came to, pro-choice, pro-life issues and everything that goes on behind the scenes with that. And so when I started working there, I had heard of Lila for the first time from working at Planned Parenthood, and she had already done, I think, her first expose at that point, or I don't know, it could have been the second one. But fast forward to the January, February of 2011, when specifically where I'm talking about here in this chapter is when she did her sex trafficking abuse and her undercover expose on Planned Parenthood helping to aid and abet in sex trafficking.
Yep.
And so really just, to, not spoil it for the reader, but, I've talked about it before. It was just the way that Planned Parenthood responded that absolutely was kind of like the catalyst that led me to believe, wow, I need to really get out of this place. It wasn't so much that there was one single, thing that where I had this aha moment, I need to get out, but there were several moments like that. Several components, including, this expose, including, my Catholic faith, including 40 Days for Life. There was all these little components that led up to that final moment where I said I have to leave.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to the need for that sort of breadth of ministry in pro-life circles, is that you never know what one thing is going to make a difference, or what combination of things is going to make a difference. So you have to continue working on all of these fronts in order to do that. I think that's a great testimony to that. Let's go back to the beginning, because I want people to get a sense of who you are, Ramona, and the path that you took. And again, we want people to buy the book, so we're not going to reveal all the secrets here. But let's set this up for us to let us know how you found yourself at Planned Parenthood in the first place.
Yeah, I think, in telling the story, I think it was really important for us to go back and just kind of look at how we kind of get lost in a world of sin.
Yes, we do.
And that for me was super important when discerning and really coming to the decision to tell this story, because it's really more than just a book about pro-life and someone who worked at Planned Parenthood. It's a story about God's mercy and His grace and how He works in our lives. And so I think that's kind of really something that was near and dear to my heart, because there's this spiritual element to it all that goes beyond, just the issue of abortion. And so, for me, that was real important to capture, going back to when I was a kid and kind of how someone gets lost along the way. And so that's where we start off is, as a child, I kind of have this moment where God reveals Himself to me, and we start there, and then we kind of take the reader on, the fact that I was, in a difficult home situation. My dad was an alcoholic, and then I became pregnant at 16. I was a teen mom, was in an abusive relationship, an unhealthy relationship with my daughter's dad, and we got married civilly, we divorced, annulled, and then I remarried, and then entered fully into the church in preparation for that marriage, and then got lost again a couple years later and ended up at Planned Parenthood. So it's just kind of one of those things where you go, wow, looking back, you think, how did I end up there? And what is, there's not necessarily this one specific thing, but I think it goes back again to us not fully living out our faith and being knowledgeable of that, and how just certain circumstances can just trip us up in our life. And that's kind of how I felt like I constantly was tripping up over and over, but just in different situations.
Right. And I think that, it's interesting because we're having this conversation on the same day that, Nancy Pelosi, I don't know if you saw this story because it was kind of an interesting story. I haven't written about it today, but Nancy Pelosi was challenged on abortion by a reporter of, I'm not sure who the reporter was working for, at a press conference today. And Nancy Pelosi, the question was, if it's a human liver, if it's a human heart, how can that not be a human being in an abortion? Referring again to these CMP Planned Parenthood videos. And Nancy Pelosi says, look, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a devout Catholic. I know more about this than you do. But she never actually answered the question. She just refused to answer the question. And I mean, we can sit here and rip on Nancy Pelosi, but I think all of us, myself included, have been lost in the fallen world, right? And you start believing some of these things, and they become, I don't know, your own doctrine, I guess, and you get locked into that. I don't think any of us are perfect on that score. I think all of us have that problem. And
absolutely.
And so it just struck me when you were telling this story that's exactly the same thing that was going on in this press conference with Nancy Pelosi today, is that she's lived in that for so long that she doesn't see outside of it.
Right.
It's very difficult to gain that kind of perspective.
Yeah, and we see that so often. We see that so often in our fellow Catholics who identify as Catholic, and that was kind of my situation. I always identified myself as a Catholic woman. I never left, quote unquote, left the church. But looking back, I think had the church known what I was doing, I probably would have been excommunicated or something. I didn't know that when I was working for Planned Parenthood. I just thought, okay, I'm a Catholic woman, and I believe that, God is real, and every now and then we would go to Mass, and, the longer I stayed at Planned Parenthood, the more difficult it was for me to enter into the church without feeling like I didn't belong. And, and so again, that goes back to the whole spiritual thing, where I know it wasn't that God was challenging me. I think it was, the enemy that was just kind of saying, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. God doesn't want you here, this sense of guilt. And when all reality, looking back, I think all it was is God was tugging, at me and saying, I do want you here, but you need to come and reconcile. And so, that story I tell again, in the book of how my faith played a major part in me being able to take that final leap of faith. Because although all of these components were in place, the Lila Rose exposés, the Catholic radio had a huge part, 40 Days for Life. Ultimately, that's why it was called, a Catholic, that's why I entitled it Redeemed by Grace, because ultimately it's God's grace that really awoke in me to the truth, and all of these components in combination with, God's grace and obviously the sacraments of reconciliation and the Eucharist and praying the Rosary and all of these, components together helped me to finally take that final leap out.
Well, let's talk about the final leap out, because I think that's always interesting to people is, what happened when I don't want to say, exactly, what your mindset was, but obviously you came to a realization, you had an epiphany of sorts, and you have to leave your job. I mean, that's a big deal. And especially if I have this right, you were a manager at a clinic, which means that, it's not a bad job in terms of being able to make your, pay your bills and that sort of thing. And you've got kids. Obviously, all those things are tugging at you. What happened when you walked in and said, that's it?
Yeah. There was a defining moment, of course. I think, everything always comes to head, right? And there were actually kind of two major moments. One was when I heard on Catholic radio, I heard the host of the radio show, she had made this comment about how one day we're going to stand before God, and he's going to ask what, did you know about abortion? And if you did, what did you do about it? And so that really hit me really hard. And of course, we'll go into deeper detail in the book about that scene. But then right after that, Divine Mercy Sunday was the day that I made that final decision where, because for several months it was just this tug of war back and forth. I can't leave without another job. I have to stay. How are we going to pay our bills? All of these things, right? I know that I need to leave. I know that this is bad. God wants me out of here, but I can't take that leap of faith without something else to turn to. Because I did not have anywhere else to go. I didn't have a job lined up or anything like that.
Right.
And so really it was totally and completely a leap of faith. And Divine Mercy Sunday that year it also happened to fall on the beatification of St. John Paul II now.
Oh, okay. I know. I remember that very well. I was in Rome for the beatification, so I know exactly the point in time you're talking about.
Yeah, and what's funny is I knew nothing about what Divine Mercy Sunday was. I didn't know the story. I just thought, it's Divine Mercy Sunday, the first Sunday after Easter. It says so on the bulletin. Okay. But what happened in church that day, what happened while sitting in the pews is what, absolutely transformed me forever. And really just hearing God say to me, trust in me and have faith in me. And the whole message of Divine Mercy I received on that Sunday, not knowing the story of Divine Mercy. And so I woke up the next morning, just knowing in my heart, I've got to leave. But because I only worked 3 days a week, I was off that Monday. I only worked Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And so I had called up my friend Lauren, and I was like, I'm leaving at the end of the month. And she's like, oh, that's wonderful. Well, then Tuesday I got up, and that was the day I had to go into work after I'd had this experience. And I knew right then and there, God was saying to me, no, you've got to leave like immediately. And so I ended up preparing everything that week, anticipating to leave that Friday. And really, it was just a matter of trying to exit quietly and without suspicion because of what we had learned from Abby's experience. We kind of applied that here in this situation to where, we want Ramona to exit without, being sued or anything like that.
Right.
We don't want them to catch on at what's going on. And so for those next 3 days, I kind of just prepared and put everything in order and, left my letter of resignation and left the keys on the desk and walked out.
What was the repercussions from that? Did you hear back from them, or were they also a little leery about the Abby Johnson experience and maybe not quite so inclined to provoke?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think they'd also learned their lesson. But I didn't receive any repercussions immediately and still really not anything yet. I say yet.
Oh, okay.
But and when I left on May the 6th, 2011, the clinic actually ended up closing down completely 3 months later. And so 40 Days for Life held a celebration rally in August of 2011. And I spoke at that rally. And that's kind of when they realized, oh, this is why she left. Because it was kind of vague in my letter of resignation as to why I was leaving. I never really said anything about, moral reasons or anything like that.
Right.
And so then, that's when I ended up receiving a letter via FedEx to my front door delivered, and it was just from the CEO, and he was just saying something like, you're entitled to, your opinions, but such and such and such. It's kind of an intimidating letter. I felt like it was meant to intimidate me or kind of warn me to be silent about some of the things that I'd seen. But I think, too, because I did not work on the abortion side of the business, there wasn't too much of a threat on that part. But now I'm realizing, after I left, I started to really feel like God was calling me to share my story, really as a witness, not just to glorify God, but also for people to open their eyes and see that there's another side of this organization that we're not talking about. And that's kind of this, family planning side that Planned Parenthood uses really to cover up the real side of the business, which is their big money, and that's abortion.
So, Ramona, obviously the debate that's going on in Congress these days, the debate that's going on in the popular culture about what Planned Parenthood does and what Planned Parenthood is, obviously this is exactly the type of discussion that you hope that your book would be part of, and it is part of this discussion. Your experiences are part of this discussion. So the timing is good, I think, and maybe even somewhat propitious, right?
Maybe, it's interesting, when we were writing the book, it took me about 6 years to 6 months to a year, 6 years, about 6 months to a year to really discern and decide that, yes, God was calling me to this, because it wasn't something that I had on my radar. I hadn't planned to speak. I hadn't planned to do anything, but God, of course, has other plans for us.
Yeah.
And so I really kept feeling like God was calling me to this. And so in the year that it took to write the book, my writer, Roxanne Solomon, who wrote the book, who's an amazing woman, she, we worked on this for so long together, collaborated, she was the writer, and we went back and forth for so long, and then it just kind of, as books do, they kind of go on hold, and we were so anxious, like, we were wanting it to come out at this point, and then they said, it's going to come out at this time of the year, but no, after all, it's going to come out this time of the year. And so, you're like, it's not going to come out yet. But then we would always say to one another, Jesus, I trust in you, right? We put our faith that that your time and your will, everything is according to your time. And so when it finally did come out, and then all of these things started to unfold, we just kind of were like, see, God again proves that, he knows what he's doing.
Right.
So, it's just one of those things where you again, God is just saying, I'm here and I know what I'm doing and I know when, why, and how. And it's just been a beautiful journey to just kind of witness God play that role in my life.
Well, we've been speaking with Ramona Trevino. We got to let her go because she's got other things going on here, but it's been a great conversation, Ramona. Thank you very much. Her book is Redeemed by Grace, A Catholic Woman's Journey to Planned Parenthood and Back. And I would say, just one heads up really quickly, go back when you, we were talking about the difference between the family planning side and the abortion side, but when you go and read Ramona's book, pay special attention to the epilogue, because even that is not necessarily as distinct as you might think it would be. And not in terms of legalities, but in terms of philosophy and morality and that sort of thing. You have a really interesting discussion of Humanae Vitae in the epilogue, which I found fascinating. That was actually the part that I concentrate on most, because, it's like any book. You go to the back of the book and read the ending, and then you go read the rest of it. It's terrible. I know it's terrible. Ramona, thank you.
I think we're all guilty of that.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible. I used to read mysteries too, and I would do that, and I don't know. I think it's a little self-defeating, but in this case, it was great because it was really an interesting discussion. Ramona Trevino, thank you so much for being with us. God bless, and hope to hear from you again soon.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Ramona Trevino has been my guest, and we're going to wrap things up here in just a sec. And as soon as I get my cards all straightened out, there we go. I want to thank everybody for being with us today. Obviously, it was a kind of an easy effort for the part of the live show, but we did, because of the schedule over at Hugh Hewitt Studios with Adam Youngman, out on his wedding/honeymoon. In order to get Duane, we had to pre-tape, and we're going to do the same thing next week. So it's a lot of fun to do that. But next time we'll make sure that I play the pre-tape from the very beginning, because I actually pre-taped the whole intro. And then I tested it out before it ran today, just to make sure it was going to run. And I cut it off just as soon as Duane and I started talking, and I thought it would just start up again from the beginning. But yeah, there you go. That's what you get for assuming. And so I want to thank everybody for being with us. I'll be back again on Tuesday with Andrew Malcolm and some guests. So be sure to tune in then, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Central, 1 on the left coast. Doing 2 shows next week, Tuesday and Thursday. The week after that, just Tuesday, because on Thursday, I go on vacation. Now, I know I've been gone a lot, but none of it's really been vacation. And I want to take a break. So we're going to be leaving the country and heading out to Italy. So I'll be gone for about 10 days doing that. So that's October 15th through October 25th. I'll be gone. So the shows on those dates will not be on. But so there you go. By the time I get back, hopefully we're going to really dig into some of the stuff that is coming up in my book, Going Red, which will be out on April 5th, 2016. We're just really entering into the final phases of the edit of the manuscript, and then it'll hit into acceptance. It'll go into production, which takes a while, and we'll be working on that, and working on getting a book cover, work on getting a website set up, and all that kind of fun stuff. There's lots of stuff coming up, and you'll see it here unfold as the show goes along. Again, Tuesday we'll be back, so be sure to be with us on that date. Let's see who's in the chat room today. I cashed in my frequent flyer miles. Yeah, I got a lot of them this year. It's kind of funny actually, because as it turns out, I'm going to be like a what do you call that? The silver medallion flyer on Delta, because I've been flying so often this year. You have to do it all in 1 year, and I actually am going to make that plateau. I don't like to fly, so I never thought I'd be part of the elite of flying public. So there you go. Why not April 1st? T. Rand asks. That's a good question. I can tell you from my experience as an interviewer, most books are published on Tuesdays. I don't know why. I suspect at some point in 1854, they decided that Tuesdays were a really good day, and nobody's actually decided to challenge that ever since. That's just my guess. I have no idea why. But most books publish on Tuesday. And I'm assuming that there's some great scientific social studies reason for that. I have no idea what it is. So there you go. Valium miles. Yeah. Xanax miles, I think, Fausto, is a better way of putting it. Xanax miles. Alprazolam miles. All right. I want to thank Cranky. By the way, if there's any other questions, I'll answer them as we're going along here, as we're wrapping the show up. But I probably should have left some time for questions. I'll be able to answer more questions once I know the book is in production, because at that point it's locked down and we're solid. But most movie, DVD, Blu-rays, and video games are released on Tuesdays as well. I think it's just a publishing day. And for some reason, all the publishing stuff comes out on Tuesdays. I don't know why. I have no idea. But that seems to be the way of the world. And hey, it's their world. I'm just playing in it. I'm just I'm just happy to be in it at this point in time. I'm not looking to challenge the received wisdom of the publishing world in this particular case. I'm just glad that my book's getting going to be on the bookstore shelves, which it will be on April 5th. In the meantime, I think you can go pre-order it now. It is up on Amazon. As soon as we get a book cover, I'll put it in the show post. But until then, I'm kind of still leery about doing stuff like that, because I'd send you over to Amazon, and it's just like this generic, type thing over a black rectangle. It's not going to be what the book cover looks like at all. So I'm just kind of holding off on that. But at any rate, Going Red is the title. Going Red. And the subtitle has changed a bit, so I don't have it memorized yet. But Going Red is the title. If you look up Going Red, Ed Moore, so you'll find the Amazon link. All right. I want to thank Cranky T-Rex, Duke of the Dance, who's here every single show to run the chat room and make it all fun for us and offer us his many, many witty quips in the chat room. I guess we can call him Chatizen number 1. Maybe we'll just do that. And you can find him at Cranky T-Rex on Twitter. You can find him on crankytrex.blogspot.com. This is where he writes his own stuff. Buzzpo.com. He does writing over there. And occasionally at hotair.com, where he writes some great posts for us. And it's always fun. Did I get new headshots? I will get a new headshot. And actually, the nice thing about that is one of our really good friends is a professional portrait photographer, and she's insisting that she wants to do the headshot for me as a gift, as a congratulations gift. So yes, I will definitely have a new headshot for that. I actually had a nice headshot taken, but it was a studio shot, and she wants to get me. Apparently, the thing these days is to be a location headshot. So you got to be someplace interesting and have your headshot taken there. She knows what she's doing. I'm going to let her arrange that. So, what is the meaning of Going Red? Means getting terribly embarrassed. That's what it means. No, that's not it. Think of it in terms of elections. This is about the 2016 general election. Going Red. Okay, so you're Chatizen number 3. Jazz, Monster, and then Duke of the Dance. That's probably true, but since you are running the chat room these days, I think we can call you Chatizen number 1. So there you go. That's true, and Lady Logician was around at the time too, so there you go. All right, all those things, all those things are happening in the chat room. If you're watching this show and you're not in the chat room, if you're watching the show live, if you get a free login at ustream.tv, you can join the chat room. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff going on in there that really doesn't have a whole lot to do with what I'm doing, but it's a great little social area that goes on as long as the show is on. So there you go. Cranky T-Rex wants to say, this is clearly a book about your secret campaign of murder and mayhem the world over to influence the election. Doggone it, you weren't supposed to say anything. You weren't supposed to say anything, Cranky. All right. Okay. All right. Who else has been in the chat room? Let's play a little walking music. Let's try to keep the damage down to a minimum here. Who else has been in the chat room? Don't forget to put your own URLs up in the chat room. We're all about shameless blog promotion here at the Ed Morrissey Show. Shameless, I say. Shameless. Who else has been in the chat room? We've got Agent 57, Breck Nichols, one of the fabulous Tribbles, and my shipmate from the Hugh Crew Cruise. Conservative and Liberal Hands, Fausta from FaustasBlog.com, a great Western Hemisphere blog. I read her every single day, and so should you. She's got some great stuff up there right now, by the way. She's been writing up a storm. Iron Cad, Juanito Cabron, Mike Rathbone, 86 back in the chat room. Great to have you there. Mr. Fastbucks, another one of the fabulous Troubles from the Hugh Hewitt Show. Don't forget to check out the Huniverse, HUGHNIVERSE.com, the troll-free web surfing experience for Hugh Hewitt fans. I am a member, and you should be as well. T-Rand, TR4A, my cousin Mike. Hi, Mike. And, of course, Via Passa with the ancestral Morrissey Mance. Come on. And the first mate somewhere out there keeping me on the straight and narrow. All right, folks, don't forget, we're going to be back on Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Central, 1 on the left coast. Don't miss miss a minute of the Ed Morrissey Show. Have a great weekend, folks. See you later.